We are living in an artificially induced state of consciousness that resembles sleep. The poor and the underclass are growing. Racial justice and human rights are non-existent. We have been lulled into a trance. They have made us indifferent to ourselves, to others. We are focused only on our own gain. That is their primary method of survival. To keep us asleep, to keep us selfish, to keep us sedated.
You're listening to Toward Anarchy on the Republic Broadcasting Network. Here's your host, Michael Storm.
Joining me, I'm Michael Storm, and it is always my pleasure to be here. It's been a long day, but I'm glad that I get to sit down and do this. It's definitely one of the things that I look forward to during my week, and so as always, I'm happy to be here. I'm glad that you're here. I appreciate you tuning in. It's Saturday night, prime time. We're worldwide right here on the Republic Broadcasting Network. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram and X and just about everywhere else on the internet at Toward Anarchy. And wherever you find me, please just take a moment to click that like button or that share button, that subscribe button, whatever the terminology is there, whether it's a heart or a thumb or whatever it is, just real quick. That's all it takes, just a split second to do it. And you can follow along, as always, with every episode at towardanarchy.com. And really, that's kind of where it all begins. That's where the magic is. That's where I try to keep myself centered anyway. It's the focal point for this little presentation. It makes sense for it to be that way because I can share it with you. And I've been doing the website building thing for almost as long as there have been websites. It's one of the fun things. I started doing it for fun. I wanted to have fun building a page and presenting information and showing that information to people all around the world and getting their feedback and their input on it. And it started with sort of comic books and has kind of circled back around to comic books, I guess, as it is. And in between, all along in between, there's been this running theme of me talking about libertarianism, voluntarism, anarchy, whatever you want to call these social connections that we're trying to suggest that our entire society can be built on the same social connections that exist amongst us as individuals, that we don't have to have this third party, this Leviathan, this beast. That will be the word that comes up that is used in the next hour with my guest, Paul Dayton. Paul Dayton is an author. He has written a couple of books, Correcting Our Financial Miseducation, and there's a couple more words to go along with it, but that's the main title of the book there. It was highly praised as Sadly Anti-Proletariat, so I had to have a chat with him when I saw that in the feedback on Amazon there. And he also wrote Socialism, the Gift, the Nixon quotes thing, the gift that keeps on taking. And that was a big chunky one, and we'll talk about those, and we'll talk about all aspects of government and voluntarism, and we'll get into the minimum wage and how terrible the minimum wage is and how destructive it is, and just a lot covered. And he's one of these guests that we're going to have back again at some point in the future, because there was just not enough time to talk about everything that we would have liked to have talked about, but we will do our best, and we'll get him in here at the top of the hour, and we will have that conversation. Until then, plenty of things to do. There's so much going on, and I felt a little bit disconnected. I wanted to. came into this going, wow, this week just kind of, what am I going to do? Because I felt a little bit disconnected in terms of just talking about what's going on because of a couple of things that happened. One, last week we had Dr. Lloyd and David Enke in here, and they were here for the full 2 hours, so I didn't share any of the links that I had acquired, any of the things that I had come across in the previous week. So it's been a couple of weeks now of built up links and ideas, and sometimes it's quotes, and sometimes it's this memes and things like that, whatever it is that I collect throughout the week, and I only share some portion of them ultimately in the end of it all. But this other thing that happened, the one thing was not having that time to do the Anarchist Audit ultimately last week, and then this being disconnected feeling, I had to find some way to get over it. That's how it is, and it's, I'm still struggling with it. It's just a little bit weird to feel like you're missing something, like you haven't accomplished it, you haven't done it, and I haven't felt that way in a while because I've been on things, I've been accomplishing things, but every once in a while, stuff gets a little bit ahead of you, and you start thinking, oh, am I forgetting something? And I feel like I'm doing a disservice to myself or to the people that I'm otherwise servicing, whether it's through the comic book shop or whether it's a conversation that I'm having in just day-to-day life, or if it's us doing our thing here each week together, it's whatever it is, and that second thing that happened was, it just broke me. That's why it became such a big deal, because it wasn't just, I didn't do what I normally do, so I feel like I'm out of place, I feel like something is missing, but then this technology thing comes up and gets in the way, and it didn't have anything to do with me for once. It wasn't my own fault, it wasn't me messing something up. What it is the social media, Facebook, Meta, and their chat program. I use it to talk to myself. It's easier than my phone. It's easier than doing text on my phone. It's at the computer. And so I just send I send links to myself. I send quotes to myself. I send memes to myself, whatever. And I have years of them it just goes back and back. You can keep scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, and the stuff has never gone away. But all of a sudden this week, they are changing their technology, whatever they're doing, whatever they've done in the past to keep the data, to store the conversations that you have. They changed something this week, and so everything from the last 2 weeks or so disappeared off of my little chat with myself, and luckily. So it ends up being kind of a little bit my fault, but not really. So they're in the middle of changing this, and they start advertising. They've just started doing this. They start advertising every time your messenger pops up there. It says something about your messages aren't backed up or whatever, because they're getting ready to change to this new thing, or they have already changed to it, and so these things may go away, and there's something about how they were stored on your computer, at least during this period where they're making this adjustment, and I lost all of this data. I have a dozen links or something like that, at least, not including other stuff. But I was able, and once they're gone, they're gone. How am I going to get them back? They were things that I ultimately came across randomly anyway, just in my daily pursuit of information. And so it's not like I necessarily was out there looking for something. I'm doing what most people do. I'm not doom scrolling. I have a purpose when I'm looking around, but I'm trying to behave like most people behave and have this sort of information pop up to me and say, hey, here I am. Are you interested in me? And if I am, I capture the link and I send it to myself. So if the link is gone, there's nothing there. Luckily, so they all disappear off of my main system. But I hadn't closed down my laptop. I hadn't shut the windows, hadn't done anything, hadn't closed the browser. And so all the conversations that I had were still there on that machine, and that's weird. That's not how non-local data should be stored. I should be able to find that information in both spaces. It should exist in both spaces. So whatever they're doing, it's not my fault that the information is gone ultimately. It's something that they've done. But I was able to pull up a series of the links that I had missed over the last week, and I was able, last 2 weeks ultimately, and was able to recover them by having not, see, there it is right there. Your chats aren't backed up. Back up your chats so you can restore them if you switch devices. And that's not how something centralized should work. There's no reason why it should matter if I switch devices, why they wouldn't be backed up in one place or another. They're going through and changing something that they don't need to change. It's something it's not necessary. But supposedly it's supposed to help protect our communications from one to another. You know, it's supposed to help encrypt it or something along those lines. And yeah, that's just my little technical rant. It was frustrating. It's bad enough that you wouldn't believe how many times I cuss my computer out in any given day because it doesn't do what it should do, and that has nothing to do with me. That's not in my using it. That's in it not acting the way I should use it. It's simple stuff. It's like highlighting a word in a certain box, and instead of in that box it behaving like it does in any other box in the computer, it grabs a hold of it and wants to pull it as if it's copying it, instead of just highlighting it, and I'd be able to tab a key through it or backspace into it and delete it all or whatever it is. It wants to grab it and pull it, and you can't do anything with it. And I'm using this as an example because it's a very specific example. It shouldn't happen. It doesn't happen in any other box, but it happens in one box on a piece of software that I use all of the time. And it happens in different programs and different things all across. Not that particular error, but just the usage, the failure of usage, the failure of the computer to do things consistently, the software, I should say, to do things consistently even within itself. And that's frustrating as hell for somebody that understands how computers work, and that you have to purposely be going out of your way, changing the very basic functions of the way your computer works to get it to behave that way in your software, you jackass. It's just insane. I want to slap software developers across the board all the time, and it's because of stupid stuff like that. Things that happen in one spot that don't happen in any other spot or for any other reason, and they only happen at a time when it's annoying, or you would never even notice it. And it just drives me nuts because these guys get paid a whole bunch of money to put out subpar work and to do subpar programming, and it drives me nuts because it's, for one, when you're talking about building Windows, a program or something like that these days, there's literally, you don't have to do, and you haven't had to do it for a long time, you don't have to do all of the visual programming. All of the visual programming is done for you. You don't have to draw lines from here to here and detect collisions and things. It's not, especially when you're talking about just software, not like a video game. Something to make your computer do something quote unquote productive. And so it just drives me nuts. As you can see, I ended up just going off about it there for a few minutes. And it's just because you rely on something for years and years and years. It works functionally the same way. That's why I'm talking about this messenger. It works functionally the same way for years and years and years. And all of a sudden they have to come along and change something, and it breaks the way the thing works for no reason whatsoever. And and in a way that it's inexplicable. It's inexplicable. How is there information that's in this one space over here that's not in this space over here if it's cloud-based, if it's server-based information and not locally stored information? And if it is locally stored information, then how the hell do I have all the links that I share? How can I type in one right here and add a link to it on this computer and see it pop up on the other computer instantly through the messenger program? That just, I know it's terrible. We can talk about something else. But hey, at least that is something I can fix. Dealing with the programs, I can go out and find new programs. I can go out and find a better software developer. I can't do that with government. I can't fix that particular problem. So we still got to have that conversation, even if you don't like it. Support Republic Broadcasting Network, republicbroadcasting.org. Click on the donate button over there on the left-hand side. Look, I'll show you how it goes. You do it right over here, and you click on this one. This is if you go through it through my website. Right there. Look at, beautiful Republic Broadcasting Network website that you guys have been responsible for help keeping online all these years. Us here doing the broadcast as well as the website itself, everything that you donate, all that money, it goes to all of that stuff. And thank you for doing it. You've kept Republic Broadcasting here in people's spaces for a long, long time, and hopefully will continue to as well. Click that donate button over there on the left-hand side at republicbroadcasting.org. It's a little yellow button. It's easy to see, and it just takes a couple of clicks after that, and you make a one-time donation or a regular donation. The amount is up to you. Real simple to do. If you don't want to mess around with the machine, give us a call, 800-724-2719, extension 3, and you can speak to somebody that will tell you about other options for supporting the network, other ways that you can send things in. Of course, you can just simply mail a check. If you're ready to do that, you're ready to just sign the check and throw it in the mail, that's easy. 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas 78664 is where you'd send that. And, of course, the win-win is shoprbn.com. That's where you support the advertisers. The advertisers continue to support the network by advertising on it and feeding. You realize how skinny these board ops are and the producers are and the people at they're skinny, right? We need to feed these people. I'm telling you. Really, your continued support of the network is amazing, and thank you for all that you do, making it possible for me and all the other voices to come here each week and do the things that we do. You know, I get my little 2 hours here on Saturday nights, and it's fun, and we have our important conversations, but it's not about me. I'm not the only one. There's an entire network there. There's hours upon hours of programming all week long that has nothing to do with me, and then there's more hours during the week that do have something to do with me. There's the Thursday show. Dr. Dean Lloyd and I are live right here on Republic Broadcasting Network. We've been talking to people from all around the world. It's just 1 hour, Thursdays from 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. And we just talk. We take calls live. We take calls across the network. We answer your health questions and concerns. And we had a call from London yesterday, and we've had calls from all over the nation over the few weeks that we've been doing it. And it's just a little test run to get a feel for it and see where. And we'll see where it goes after that. It's been a great little time that I've been spending with Dr. Lloyd, and we've been able to help some people, and that's the whole idea. Just having the conversation, just having the space, and to be able to say the words and not have to worry about whether or not somebody is judging the words, instead of, why are we saying the words to begin with? What is it that's causing us to say the words? What is it that's making us look for an alternative to the health industry, if it's along those lines, what we're talking about? And then, of course, in the case of the Thursday show, Your Health in Mind is what it's called, so that's exactly what it is. And just a really great time that we've been having there. So check it out sometime during the week if you're able to, and join us live, and even give us a call. Jump into that conversation. Go to towardanarchy.com, 2519, that's the episode, and you'll see, when you get there, you'll see Paul Dayton is my guest. We'll bring him in here at the top of the hour. and we'll talk to him about his books, and we'll talk to him about socialism and private property, and we'll talk to him about the minimum wage and about knowing things, and about whether or not you're the smartest person in the room sometimes, and whether it's legitimate for you to feel that way or not, whether you want to feel that way or not, how it can absolutely be true. It's a neat little thing that we talk about. That's all coming up at the top of the hour. Until then, I have these links that I was able to recover, and I wanted to share some things with you. And so we're going to go through as many of these as we can, because they've piled up over the last couple of weeks, and I don't even know what they are. It was all, I went to use them, they're not there, what the hell do I do? Oh, wait, here they are over here, let's just slap them back in there, and we'll figure out where to go after that. Wing it. We will just wing it. That's what we will do. But before we dive into that, I want to tell you about a fantastic and fun action, 80s action movie in a comic book that I read. Robo-Wolf, written and drawn by Jake Smith. It's on Dead Gremlin Comics through Dark Horse. So picture yourself, you're in Sunset Hills, and it's exactly what it sounds like. There's no tricks or wordplay in here. When they say Robo-Wolf, yeah, Wolfman, part robot. You got it. Sunset Hills, yeah, kind of like the Hollywood Hills. That's exactly what the impression is that you should get. In Sunset Hills, the banks are reputable, the police are brave. But the fact is, to Suzuki and VCR and Lance and Robo-Wolf himself, the bank is just a means to an end, which is ultimately saving Wolf's daughter, Lindsay. And then, of course, the Bacon Brigade there is just who they have to get away from to get the money. If Wolf had just stayed home that day, Lindsay would be fine. She wouldn't be gone. But instead of staying home and just hanging out with her and playing, there's a message here in case you're not picking up on it already. Instead of just staying home, playing with his daughter, he talks about going to work, doing his job, has things to do, but ultimately ends up sort of going out to buy her love with this junk stuff that's being advertised on TV. This is, this is thematic. This is the 70s. This is the 80s. This is the 90s. This is, every era. With the plastic junk, the images, the things on TV, the distractions, and the idea that absent parents can sort of buy their love with them. Well, that's an underlying theme. You're going to get that here. But she's gone, and unfortunately, there's just really no time for tears when the entire city is after you. They're all on the lookout, and that's not including these sort of shady, shadowy types in the background that seem to know who this little gang of bank robbers are, and they trying to avoid these guys, pay them back, make up for the favors, do all the things that they have to do. That's just part of what they have to do to get this $1 million delivered to Masakoff. He wants his $1 million, and so it looks like the bank robbery really and the getaway are just kind of the easy part here, because now they have to deliver this money to Masakoff, General Masakoff, and get through the city, and the city is full of gangs, and like I say, they're old enemies and old debts and things that are going on. And it's really fantastic, a 4-issue series here that's really shaping up to be very fun. Kind of reminds me of Moonshine Bigfoot, already in the just sort of the nostalgic feel and just the fun of it, the total irreverent fun of it, and just the sort of mashup of all these sort of ideas too, cyberpunk and aliens and Bigfoots and cryptids, and this is all, werewolves, wolfmen. It all fits right together, and it all has that wonderful feel about it, and it kind of reads like an 80s action flick. Robo-Wolf, it's in your local comic shops now. If you can't get your hands on one, hit me up at amazingfantasies.com, and if you're ever in Topeka, Kansas, stop in the store sometime. you really do have to come see us in the store sometime. It's neat. I'll be in there, and people have come in and said, hey, I listened to the show. I listened to the one of your reviews. I saw the review on the website, and it's just kind of neat finally combining these things together after all these years. So go to towardanarchy.com, and we'll get back to this thing. Coming up at the top of the hour, we'll get Paul Dayton in here, and we'll have this fantastic conversation. You're really going to like this. But until he gets here, let's do this thing, and this is in no particular order. Again, this was just everything fell apart, but I'll get the links for you. They'll be up there, and they'll be in nice and order. You won't have to worry about trying to figure out whether or not something works. They'll work by the time you get there, by the time you see it, and whether they work when I try to pull them up or not is going to be another story. Do they all come through? I notice that they're not. They do show the website, but we'll see how it happens. I don't know. Let's click on one and let's start, and let's just figure out what's going on. Oh, well, Loretta Swit has died. Well, that's unfortunate. Always MASH, what a fun show. Let's see, what RFK Jr. said about Kansas measles outbreak when asked by Senator Moran, Jerry Moran. Okay, so I don't know. This is one I haven't seen. We've deployed the Epidemic Intelligence Service to all the states that have requested our help, Kennedy said. We have people on the ground in those states, and we're doing a great job at limiting the spread of the outbreak. If the governor of Kansas, wants to contact us, we will deploy a team to Kansas to make sure that outbreak is curtailed there. Kennedy, U.S. Department of Health, Secretary and Human Services, blah, 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 Kansas measles outbreak. Senator Jerry Moran, Republican of Kansas. Kansas, my home state, is one of several states that are facing the impact of a recent measles outbreak. Noted many of the patients have been unvaccinated children. No, they like to say that. Let's see. And okay. I just wondered. They try to make this so much bigger of a deal than it is. But look, you go look at the numbers yourself. I don't know how many times over the years I've had to point this out or have to tell people, but I will continue to do it because the whole presentation of these vaccines is a lie. The efficacy of them is a lie. The testing of them is a lie. Everything about them is a lie, an outright lie, or at least some distortion of the relative truth in consideration of all of the truth. It's something that we talked about last week on the show just briefly in our discussion about truth, is this particular aspect of things, whereas there's more than one truth to this reality of measles, and they leave out certain facts. They talk to you about this vaccine, and they tell you, oh, you have to worry about an itch or a rash or this, these minor little things. They don't tell you about the major things. They don't tell you about the 40 people a year just with the MMR vaccine alone that are injured or killed severely. That doesn't count thousands upon thousands of others and all the other vaccines every year and all. So when they say a few people have died, that's unfortunate. It's unfortunate when anyone dies. At least for them it is, and the people around them. And so I'm willing to go with that. I'm willing to accept that death is an unfortunate thing, and that it shouldn't happen any sooner than it has to. But here's the reality. A couple of dead people every once in a while from the measles is far less. And when I say every once in a while, I'm talking about like decade. You get one that dies in a decade, a couple that dies in another decade, one that dies in another decade. So literally a handful, like a half dozen people over decades have died from measles, even though over that same decades, some 3,000 minimum 3,000, something like that, it would have had it. It would have been sick with it. It's probably considerably more than that. But that should be just the base number, somewhere around 3,000 people, with an average of about 100 people, 60 to 100 people a year catching measles and nobody dying. And then, so that's a fact. Again, Nothing that I'm saying, nothing I've ever said about these vaccines hasn't been a fact. It hasn't been information that you could not go look up yourself. And so the claim that the MMR, the measles vaccine, is better for you, or that it should be better to take it than it would be to get the measles is wrong, and it's provably wrong, and it's demonstrably wrong, and you can show it wrong year after year after year, not decades and decades, but year after year after year, over decades and decades, with many people injured, killed by the vaccine, directly related to the vaccine every single year. Far more, exponentially more than by measles itself. And you can, and people will try to argue that the vaccine, that it's because people aren't taking the vaccine, but obviously that's not true. Whether it's true that people are not taking the vaccine or not, it hasn't changed the numbers. That's the point. Because if it was just everybody stopped taking the vaccine, or that some half of the population, say half the population is no longer taking the vaccine, or has never taken the vaccine, or hasn't ever been vaccinated, at least not since they were children many, many decades ago, and we know that the efficacy of it wears off in a fairly short period of time, if it was ever really there at all. And so what you have is the potential for the measles, if it's such a big thing and so dangerous and so prolific that when people aren't vaccinating in mass numbers, and we're not in the 90-plus percentile of people being vaccinated, measles should be everywhere. But it's not. So it's a lie. They've lied to you once again. I just had to see what the RFK thing was. And that's, I'll soapbox that stuff. Just like the technology stuff. Because you're going to find, we're talking about coming up at the top of the hour with my guest, Paul Dayton. One of the things that he mentions, you're going to love this. I did. I latched onto it immediately. And he says it right away. And he's talking about if you know 3 things about a subject, any given topic, that you probably know more about it than anybody else you know, anybody around you, relative to the type of people that you're around and the type of information that it is that we're suggesting, that there be some more knowledge, that you might have some more knowledge than somebody else does. And it's an interesting idea, and I liken it to another experience, and you're just going to have to listen to this, because it's a great, you will catch the experience too. You're going to love it. You really will. That's coming up at the top of the hour. We'll get Paul in here and we'll talk about those things. But so it goes along with everything that I talk about here every week. So if I just put in this minimal amount of study and work that I do every week, and I've been doing it for decades, and not just on things like measles, but on politics and money and all these other things, I know more than 3 things about most of these things, and that means I know far more than the average person does about any of these things. And it's time that any of us who have been humble out here, as humble as we have been for a long period of time, trying to suggest that there are other people that have information and that can be a part of this conversation, and that it's their choice not to be, that it comes down to willingness to get into the conversation, ability to get into the conversation. I don't want to keep harping on this. I want to get on to the next thing. Sociopath former police chief convicted of murder and rape escapes from prison. You probably heard about this. The former Arkansas police chief who was serving 30 years for murder and rape. He escaped from prison. Grant Harden, 56 years old, been in prison since 2017 on first-degree murder and rape charges. He escaped from the Calico Rock North Central Unit on Sunday at approximately 2:50 p.m., according to the sheriff's statement. And as far as I know, he was still on the run. They're still looking for him. They have not found him yet. And that link I had just shared because one of the things that I was frustrated about for the whole week is that I kept seeing stories like that. Some scumbag cop somewhere committing some crime, violating somebody, taking advantage of their position as a police officer, as someone supposedly of authority, and violating people. And so there were a number of these things that had come up over the last couple of weeks, and I wanted to make sure to share them just because there's this idea that the police are better than us, that they're supposed to be something that we're not, that they're supposed to be capable of things that we're not, and they're just normal people that just seem to violate people just like anybody else does, only they get away with it so often. And there were just so many examples of it. Let's see. Judge finds police acted reasonably in shooting New Mexico man while at wrong address. What the hell is reasonable about that? When you have an entire goddamn surveillance apparatus system around you, you have all of these tools at your disposal, you have all of the time in the world, you have no immediate threat, no immediate danger. Obviously, they got the wrong guy. They didn't get the other guy they were supposedly after in the first place. So what are we talking about here that's not reasonable? What's not reasonable is shooting the wrong person at the wrong address. When you are the police, when you have all of the information at your fingertips, you have all the time, all the tools to get it right, and you don't, and then we have a piece of crap judge somewhere go ahead and decide that they acted reasonably. There's nothing reasonable about that. There's nothing reasonable about shooting someone, generally speaking, when they're not threatening you, when they've been of no harm to you. And so generally just shooting someone is not a reasonable action. Shooting a wrong person in the wrong home at the wrong address, there's nothing reasonable about that. There's nothing. What the hell is the definition of the word reasonable? Let's just go look up the word reasonable and see what it even says, because I've made this claim before that these things, the bulldozer guy, Haymeyer, and him being sometimes reasonable men are driven to do unreasonable things. No, wrong. Reasonable people do the reasonable thing all the time. So reasonable definition. Reasonable. Adjective. Having sound judgment. Fair and sensible. Oh, well, I guess that's it. Sound judgment. People don't have that. They're not fair and they're not sensible. No, come on now. Let's stop pretending. Let's stop using the word reasonable to represent something when a person has every single tool. It's the same with the Haymeyer thing. Every single tool at their disposal. Every single reasonable thing has been done to mitigate the circumstances, or should be being done to mitigate the circumstances of any negative circumstance of the actions that these people are taking, and they don't. And they don't. Are you kidding me? There's nothing reasonable. And this judge needs to be bounced, if not just rolled out into the street. And by what I mean by rolling somebody out in the street, I mean dragging them out in the street and kicking their ass. This guy has no business. And these people, these cops, have no business being trusted with their power, with their so-called authority. None whatsoever. When they make the argument that reasonable is shooting the wrong person at the wrong house. Their intelligence, their data collection, everything they do should stop this, should prevent this. Let's see, what is this one? Former New York State trooper pleads guilty to faking his own shooting. Former New York State trooper pleaded guilty Wednesday to charges that he shot himself and then falsely claimed he was wounded, I remember this, by an unknown gunman on a Long Island highway, prompting a region-wide search. Thomas Messia agreed to serve 6 months in jail, followed by 5 years probation and continued mental health treatment as he formally changed his not guilty plea during a court appearance in Nassau County Court in Manola. So, yeah, this is the piece of crap that calls himself a cop. He's better than us. He's better than the rest of us. He's smarter than us. He's more reasonable than us. And he reasoned that it would be okay to shoot himself. Let's see, the 27-year-old West Hempstead resident had been charged with official misconduct, tampering with evidence, and falsifying documents. Okay, I guess you got to charge him with something. He became a trooper in 2019, resigned in January after being suspended without pay while state police launched a criminal investigation into the shooting. His parents pleaded guilty to possessing an illegal firearm, which was found during a search of the family's home. Interesting. Claimed he was shot in the leg on October 30th by a driver parked on the shoulder of the Southern State Parkway about a mile from his home. Instead, prosecutors say he staged the scene, and I want to know why. This is why I'm still reading. What is the reasoning behind? What was his reasonable reason for shooting himself and then blaming someone else? Prosecutors say he staged the scene of the alleged shooting by scattering shell casings and then shot himself at a park, stashed the .22 caliber rifle, drove back to the highway, and called for backup. Nassau County District Attorney Ann Donnelly said after Wednesday's hearing that one of the most disturbing parts of the case was that he intentionally set in motion a potentially dangerous search. That's it, exactly. I don't care. This dude shoot himself. Do it right. Get yourself in the get the bullet in the head instead of in the leg, like the song says. Do it right. And let's put an end to this crap where things like this are happening. You know what? You harm yourself all you want, but this is the problem with the police and the problem with the laws is that they're all very much predicated on the notion that if you don't do it, that they have the right, or that if you harm one of these people, if you don't follow one of their rules or you harm one of them, that if you do one of these things that they don't think is good, that they will hunt you down and they will kill you. They will start a manhunt for you. Somebody shot a cop. Oh, my God, call in every cop in every one of the 5 boroughs from everywhere around and let's start a posse and let's bring this piece of crap in, endangering everybody. You get a large group of gang members, armed gang members, who have been wronged, and you unleash them on the population with basically carte blanche to do whatever they want to anyone, to find the person who has violated them and broken their rules and endangered everybody in the process. You scumbag. This guy deserves more than just a prison sentence. He needs to be drug out into the street and have the crap kicked out of him. There's just no, because this is, and why do I say it that way? And why do I seriously mean it? Because it needs to be done in public. He needs to pay for his abuse of the public's trust. And the public needs to understand that when you abuse the public trust, that you pay for it. And that you seriously pay for it. This is, if you see this, what happened in Liverpool here this last week with this guy driving through this parade. Did you see this footage? You see the way that they drug this guy out of his car and just tried to, the cops are kind of trying to stop people from doing it, but they're basically kicking the crap. It's a mob. It's hundreds and hundreds of people. They're trying to kick the crap out of this guy. Why? Because that's what justice is. When somebody violates you and violates the public trust of somebody like this guy going to prison, it doesn't serve anything. It doesn't fix anything. Him having to spend years on probation. We just have to continue to pay for his ass. That's what happens. We had to pay for him to be a scumbag, enforcing political and social opinions and endangering people while he was a cop. And now we got to pay for him for his mental health care for the rest of his life, or at least for the next 5 years. He'll probably get his pension. He probably, these people that try to protect these criminals with badges, and the system that protects them, they find all sorts of ways to enable these scum to get back out there on the street, to get their jobs back, to keep their pensions after they've violated the public trust, and it just can't be done anymore. More of this is going to be in the next hour in the conversation with Paul Dayton. In fact, just talking about how justice is really met in reality and the terms of reality, and we've discussed it before, and the terms of reality is that if you choose to mess with another person or their property, they could hurt you or kill you, and that's just a simple fact of things. And we have taken this system and put it in between violators, the violated, and the system gets justice. The people get justice. The state gets justice. You all get to sleep better at night because some criminal that it was no harm to the general public to begin with, harmed somebody and is now in a cage, even though that person is harmed, possibly beyond repair, and they'll never see a dime from that person. They'll never see recompense of any kind from that person because now that person is paying the state. Maybe it trickles down through the state. There's a little check or something that some victim gets at some point, or some victim's fund gets at some point, but it's not justice. The state is just putting on a show, and it puts on the show so that it can maintain its monopoly on force, and that's all there is to it. More of that conversation is in the next hour, and that conversation doesn't end. That's a conversation that we have to decide, well, we're going to have more of this conversation at a later date. Let's see, I don't know if I saw any more of the cop things. There was more of them. Here, let's do this one. This one sounded really good. This wasn't about cops, but this was another one of these things where it fries the senses to see it when it pops up, and I didn't go and read it purposely just so I could share it with you, and we could go over it, and we'd see what happens, and see if we can get me to get a little bit riled up here. The Second Amendment makes no sense. Here are 8 facts that prove it. I know that this is not what I think it is. They're being tongue-in-cheek here. They have to be, because this is something called survival world. So unless their claim here is that Second Amendment makes no sense because it's unenforceable, because because it can be interpreted in different ways, different legal ways to exclude people from being able to protect themselves from the natural right of self-defense. Unless that's what they were going with this, I don't see how this could be true. This has got to be a joke, right? We're about to find out. The Second Amendment makes no sense. Here are 8 facts that prove it. Yeah, I don't need a summary from Copilot. I don't know how many times I have to turn that crap off. I'm constantly having to turn it off on my on the email, and stop trying to, every time they do an update, every 2 seconds there's another update, so that they can try to turn on all this invasive and intrusive garbage. I didn't need Copilot to help me write a simple response to a damn email for the last 30 goddamn years that I've been sending emails. I don't need it now. Stop it. Not everything has to be tainted with your controls and your manipulations, and that's what Copilot and AI and all that stuff is. It's just controls and manipulations. It's worse than a search engine. It's worse than just putting out the information and letting somebody find it, letting somebody search through it. It's manipulated search results, and not only that, it's manipulated search parameters. It's a machine that's been told that it is to ignore certain subsets of reality and certain bits of information for the sake of what I don't know, for the sake of the state, for the sake of argument, I don't know how you remove points of the argument to make a better argument necessarily, unless those points are demonstrably wrong. But if you're not having the conversation about those points, how can you prove that they're wrong? How do you show that they're wrong when you just ignore them? We're going into some weird times. If some things don't change fundamentally with it's all hell is going to break loose over the next few years. I don't see how it can't. With the constant ratcheting and the one-upmanship of just the political class itself. Second Amendment makes no sense. Here are 8 facts that prove it. The Second Amendment is one of the most fiercely debated and poorly understood sentences in American history. It's just 27 words long, managed to divide legal scholars, ignite cultural wars, and spark legal battles for centuries. Wrong. It has managed to create a division between people and authority. Normal people and anyone who would claim authority. Why? Because guns will put an end to authority, generally speaking. And so the only people who argue against the very clear language of the Second Amendment are people who would take away your right of self-defense, period. They don't want a reason, they just want you. They want one, they want who they want to have one, but they don't want you to have a gun. That's the truth. So, let's see. What makes it such a flat point? Well, one, the grammar is clunky. No, it's not. Its meaning is vague. No, it's not. Drastically different. Its meaning is vague enough to invite drastically different interpretations. No, it's not. Only if you've already made up your mind that people don't have the right to defend themselves, that the right of self-defense doesn't exist. If you've made up your mind about that, then you might argue about what that those 27 words mean, but there's nothing ambiguous about them. There's nothing that can't be understood. They're not vague. These interpretations are false interpretations. They're interpretations outside of the very clear language that is used. They're not even interpretations. They're just arguments against certain language or certain words within it. Let's see, between the prefatory clause about a well-regulated militia. See, that's exactly what I'm talking about. What about the words are misunderstood here? Well-regulated militia. That's the organized militia. That doesn't have anything to do with the individual firearms that belong to the individual people who make up militia. There's no confusion about these words. That's a lie, and it's a lie I'm tired of hearing of, and it's a lie that I have told people to their face, people that I've known for decades to their face, that if you're the type of piece of crap who interprets that thing that way, those words, these 27 words in a way that empowers one person to defend themselves or have the right to have firearms and not another, then we're not friends. That you are a part of the problem, and that the blood of slaughtered innocents by the state and by criminals is on your hands, Brady Goodman. It was just one specific example of somebody that I know personally for decades in my lifetime who does not believe that we have the right of self-defense. He doesn't, and there's no reason for it. He just doesn't argue it. It's just guns are bad. That's all. And only good guys should have guns, except that he has no definition for the word good guys except for leftists or anybody he chooses. That's the example of the person. This is a real example, and it's a real example of a real person, and it's a archetype of a person that exists that is an anti-gunner because they have no information. They know nothing about guns. They think they have this notion of right and wrong on their side, because you just because somebody violates your property, you shouldn't shoot them, you shouldn't kill them. Wrong. Somebody shouldn't violate me or my property and put me in a position where I have to defend myself with a firearm. And if you can't see the difference between them, we're not friends. We're not friends. In fact, you are an enemy of mine. You are a very much a dangerous person to me and every other peaceful person on the planet. You are the type of person that says something stupid, and this is a thing that went around for a while, that said something stupid about when I see somebody carrying a gun in public, I'm going to take it from them. That's what gets a jackass shot. And you deserve to be shot trying to take a gun from somebody. It doesn't matter what your reasoning are. And I'm not going to say you deserve to get shot for just taking anything from somebody, but if you get shot, you deserved it. Those are two different things. If I have to explain it to you, I will, but I don't think I have to. I think it says it exactly what it needs to be said. Let's see. In the operative clause about the right of the people. What about that? The right of the people. What is confusing about this? This is the Second Amendment makes no sense. Here are 8 facts that prove it. So far, you've mentioned like 5 things, and none of them are a fact that proves anything. This is worse than I thought it might be. Here are 8 facts that shed light. See, we haven't even got to fact 1 yet, and they've already stated 5 things that are completely opinions, not facts. Oh, my God. Here are 8 facts that shed light on why the Second Amendment has become a constitutional headache and why it's confusing. Construction still matters. Ugh, what a back-ass-words approach. Would you have AI help write this? It wouldn't surprise me. Let's look. Let's see. Where's this survival world? I bet if we go and look, I'm willing to bet that it says AI helped write this. Let's see. Survival World, survivalworld.com. I don't care. Yep, it does look like the same place. And see, what was this? What was the exact language? Second Amendment makes no sense. All right, the Second Amendment makes no sense. Do they have a search? Here's 2A. Second Amendment makes no sense. Anywhere in here, nothing. Second Amendment advocates fight back. I've done this before, and it was really recently, and it was literally on one of these exact same things, and it may have even been this exact same site. I don't think it was, though. I think it was another survival site, or survival-themed sort of thing where they were talking about Second Amendment rights, and I did, and I went and I looked, and I found, as I always do, I find most of this stuff on MSN because it aggregates, and I can choose to get anything from anywhere. And the bigger thing behind that is if they share an article through MSN, I don't have to worry about a paywall. There's no paywall. It's reprinted on MSN. But I'll go and I'll try to follow up and go back to the original article and just look around and see what else. And you've seen it happen live, as it were, on the show before where I've been, this is interesting. Let's go check out this website and let's see what they're all about. But this, in particular, this idea recently of articles just like this, where when you go back to the original article, they admit that they don't admit it on the MSN site, but they admit it that it was that AI was used to help write the article. And I just wish that I could actually find this specific article on here. And maybe I will before we're done here. We're already getting close to the end of the top of the hour. We're going to have to, let's see if I go through that link. No, just more articles that they provided. Frustrating. I really, really would have liked to have been able to do that, but I do want to go back here and finish the article. Maybe at some point I'll be able to. It happens. It's just, I would not be surprised at all if there was somewhere, maybe at the end of it, maybe by the time we get to the end of it, or at the bottom of one of the pages or something. No, because this is one of those pages that just keeps feeding you news at the bottom of it. Just keeps reloading news and keeps reloading more news. I don't know. Maybe we'll see it when we get to it. The amendment went through multiple drafts and got worse each time. Madison's original draft of the Second Amendment made a lot more grammatical sense. Started with the main point: the right of the people to keep and bear arms should not be infringed. But that'd be nice and simple, sure. It'd be all right if it was kept to that. That's fine. I like that. That's nice and short and simple and sweet. But yeah, here we are talking about the politicians and the manipulators, and you have to put some back door, and that's the entire federal system, right? Is entirely back to. Oh my, you know what? We are so out of time. We're so close. I will come back to this one next week. This is something that because of the way everything got scattered around, it didn't play out exactly like I wanted it to. But I will come back to this Second Amendment thing next week, and we'll go back through it again. I got to bring Paul Dayton in here. We'll be right back on Toward Anarchy.
We are living in an artificially induced state of consciousness that resembles sleep. The poor and the underclass are growing. Racial justice and human rights are non-existent. We have been lulled into a trance. They have made us indifferent to ourselves, to others. We are focused only on our own gain. That is their primary method of survival. Keep us asleep, keep us selfish, keep us sedated.
You're listening to Toward Anarchy on the Republic Broadcasting Network. Here's your host, Michael Storm.
And off we go into hour number 2, TowardAnarchy.com to follow along. If you are looking for this specific show, it's number 2519. You'll see Paul Dayton is my guest. You can, of course, follow along at TowardAnarchy.com. All the links and everything are there. There's a link to pauldayton.us. That's where you can find out more about Paul and his work as an author. He is author of Correcting Our Financial Miseducation, a highly praised as a Sadly Anti-Proletariat work. And so I thought that was great when I saw that quote. We'll get into that. Also, Socialism, the Gift That Keeps on Taking. It's a 500-page treatise, 500-plus pages, huge. Yeah, treatise on 4,000 years of human history, and talking about wealth redistribution and the importance of private property and many of the things that we discuss around here all the time on the show. So it seemed like a perfect fit to have Paul come on the show. There's also a link up there. If you like what you hear, there's a link up there to Amazon where you can purchase his books as well, and you can support him. So Paul, after quite the little game of trying to get connected here, I think everything is working, man. Good to meet you. Great to talk to you.
Same here. Thanks so much for having me. I've heard a few episodes of your show. I think what you do is very interesting, and I'm really pleased and flattered that you have me on. So I look forward to the talk.
I'm glad you were able to take the time. I know that when we first started talking about it, we were talking about doing it later, but it just worked out to where I was able to move some things around. I've been trying to talk to this guy in China who is he's spent 30 years dealing with human trafficking and modern slavery. But the fact that he's in China, it's hard for us to get connected. And he had ended up double booking. And I said, you know what? Let's just push this thing down. Let's get you back into a comfortable spot. I've got somebody else, I bet, that could come on the show. If not, I'll turn on the microphone and ramble at people for 2 hours. No big deal. But so, yeah, I was glad it worked out. You know, we're friends on the social media there. And I see you've written these books, and so I went and I clicked and I checked out the Amazon, and I don't care about other people's opinions necessarily, but I wanted to get a feel for kind of what was maybe what you were talking about in the book from people who had read it. And so I'm looking through the little feedback and everything there on Amazon, and I came across this one quote, and it just said that the book was Sadly Anti-Proletariat, and I knew I had to talk to you. So. Tell me a little bit about what brings you to do this, to write a book, to be talking about economics. It sounds like you have a history of, not unlike my own, kind of a normal guy, just doing normal things, trying to succeed, and seeing and meeting some people maybe over the years that told you some different views and showed you some different views of the economy and how we think of it, and money and property and yeah.
Yes. So for certain, what you said was part of what really got me into this. You say a person described my stuff as sadly anti-proletariat. What people do is they mistake the freedom to choose, a lack of government going in and sort of holding one person's arm behind their back. They mistake that as an attack on the person. So in other words, take for example like a labor union law. A labor union is just a monopoly. It's just a job holder's monopoly. The people who are already presently working a present job or a present industry, holding out all those who would compete with them for those jobs. It is all the people who would be potentially proletariat just means wage earners. People who are solely people who earn money by waging for other people at other people's businesses. So what you have is a law that benefits the extremely small minority of the worker as a class who are already working at a given place or in a given industry, and it keeps out the overwhelming majority of the workers or would-be workers, people who are presently unemployed, cannot get a job. They would like to become part of the worker, but these laws that are supposedly in the name of helping the proletariat, in fact, only help a small special interest group, but the general interest is sacrificed to that small special interest group, and people mistakenly say, oh, well, he's against the worker if he's against labor unions, when that's precisely the opposite of the case. And so that's the kind of thing that got me involved with this. And the other thing is people are very, on the whole, it's not everybody. It's not even that it's almost everybody, but it's certainly half of people, they don't speak the language of evidence, and they're incapable of speaking the language of evidence. What you'll find is most people speak the language of T-shirt slogans, unsubstantiated claims, masquerading as knowledge or wisdom. And what you'll find is if you know 3 facts, just 3 actual facts, concrete realities about any popularly discussed issue or matter, you will be the king or the queen of the room in the department of actual knowledge, an alarmingly large proportion of the time. And what's more alarming, more distressing, is that the people who only speak the language of T-shirt slogans, instead of being grateful you'll be embarrassed, like, oh my God, I've gone my whole life and spent hours and hours, and even if you add up, like 24 hours makes a day, days and even weeks of my life ingesting what is in fact junk food, intellectual empty calories, masquerading as nourishment. And so that's embarrassing at first, but what's even more embarrassing is once you're confronted with that, say you made an honest mistake. The people around you have always done that. You're sort of ignorant. Pigs don't know that pigs stink because they're not exposed to anything different, right? So now that they've been exposed to something different, what's more embarrassing is going the rest of your life, continuing to hamstring yourself in this way, cheating oneself out of knowledge and actually attempting to solve these problems and these issues that are at hand because they're too embarrassed to say that they made a mistake in the first place. And so my first book was called Correcting Our Financial Miseducation, Raising the Bar for the Average. And raising the bar for the average sometimes gets misinterpreted. I'm not trying to lift it out of somebody's reach so they can't touch it. That's not the idea. It can be restated as elevating the standard for ordinary. The bar for the average in the terms of, in the realm of, knowledge and discussion is just what we said. Regurgitate T-shirt slogans. There's what I call the obstinate sophistry industry. Obstinate, if people don't know the term, is if you're a child and you're going to sit in the corner going, no, not listening, that's obstinance. That's what obstinate means. And sophistry means where you'll say anything to evade the truth, anything with the slightest grain of truth. You just literally say anything to avoid reality. Obstinate sophistry. The obstinate sophistry industry, which is what in fact is called the news business most often, is penetrated and permeated the masses in a way that is detrimental to their advancement as people. Right? There's one of these special interest groups that's called for the advancement of colored people. It's standing in the way of their advancement as a person, whether you're black, white, red, green, or tall or short or whatever. When you don't speak the language of evidence, imagine being a person who is an astronomer, ditching your telescopes and your tools and your devices, your maps and all those things that you do to chart things, and just resorting to superstition and chanting magical phrases and saying that you were the responsible party. And the class of people who are insisting on using these instruments and obeying the evidence so that we can actually know the case, we're bad guys. We're anti-astronomy. Right? Like we said before, the person criticized me for being anti-proletariat when I'm in favor of freedom to choose, freedom to compete. Minimum wage laws are another, and I'll shut up for a minute, but minimum wage laws are another example of that. I say I'm for abolishing the minimum wage. The great failure of socialism, which in the United States is commonly known as the New Deal, one of the many horrors, and I do cover that a lot in my first book, of that period, the assault on liberty, there's an overreach of government, which is really, I think, the core issue of your show, is really the overreach of government, people using government as an instrument, stepping on the liberty of the people. Remember that during that time, up to that time in U.S. history, government had only consumed 10 to 15%, no more than 10 to 15% of the nation's income in each year for its own expenses, including times of war, the whole shebang. The American Civil War is a little bit different because, it's a unique period. They split into two factions, and so that's a little possible exception. But except for that, for 150 years, 10 to 15% of the nation's income, that number doubled to 20%. The government reached its hand further into the people's pockets by double, and that set the new standard. Now it was 20%. Then you get to the Great Failure of Socialism Part 2, known commonly as the Great Society, and the ever-expanded War on Poverty. That's when that grew 50% from 20 now to 30% became the new standard of the reach in their hand. So it really are as people, politicians, and certain people in the public who are using the instrument of government to satiate their envy of their betters, so they think, which in fact are harming their own self-interest. Which we can talk about in more specifics, but I'm talking right now about this creeping up of the government further and further. Then you have, by the turn of the century, you have 40 to 45%. It never quite reached 50% at its apex so far. It's federal, state, and municipal, local spending combined of the nation's income. The modern definition of slavery is 51. More than half of what a person makes is not their own. The government in the United States of America is perilously close to that line. And one of the things that happened during the Great Failure of Socialism, the New Deal, one of the most horrid periods of tyranny. Frank Roosevelt, the U.S. was still on the gold standard. He's literally setting the price of gold by plucking numbers from the air. He flipped a coin to decide the price of gold some days. I'm not making this up. This is his own staff, the New Dealers. This is their own accounting of the New Deal. The fact that this does not spell instantaneous political suicide for anybody who attaches this legislation to themselves or should be attaches that, the New Deal to themselves or any legislation they're pushing is alarming. People recite the T-shirt slogan, well, the poor were uplifted during the New Deal and the nation benefited and it was a great win for the middle class, and nothing could be further from the truth. And finally, get back to this minimum wage thing. This is a minimum price which is done in the name of helping the lowest people, the least desirable people, which in fact prices them out of the job market entirely. If you're the least preferred person, if the going rate for whatever it is, a certain job is $10 an hour, and then there's an artificial price above $10 an hour, $12, $15, why not make it $1 million an hour? Think about how much that would benefit the poor. But what happens is the least desirable people, so I can take a chance on somebody who, I'm from the city of Buffalo, New York. It's mostly black people. The graduation rate for black males in the city of Buffalo is 20%. 1 out of 5 goes out with a diploma. Of those 1 out of 5 with a diploma, according to the Buffalo Public Schools' own report card on themselves, the graduates have an average literacy rate of third grade, a third grade reading level. These are the least desirable people. If somebody comes in, they can hardly fill out the application. They don't speak proper English. They look a little bit, rough around the edges. I might be able to take a chance. I can hire 5 of you at $4 an hour or something. And probably 4 or 5 of you will not even show up to work the next day. But if somebody keeps coming in and they show an aptitude and they start learning, then I can pay you more. I can keep you on. The person has a chance to get started and to move up in terms of earning more money. And then you make connections. You learn good habits, productive habits, instead of learning the underground economy, learning how to sell drugs or prostitution or gambling, or even worse, learning the which room at the welfare bureau, which there are professional welfare people, able-bodied, handouts for the healthy is a profession, a way of life for many people. And we can say that maybe it makes sense based on the costs and the things offered to them. What I'm in favor of is revoking that whole thing and just stripping government down to the 3 legitimate functions, which are, number 1, 3 legitimate functions of the state are and only are, number 1, to establish and defend borders for its citizens. Number 2, to coin and regulate money for its citizens. And third, to provide a medium for an arena for the mediation of disputes between citizens, which are the courts. And of course, that means that the laws must be worth respecting in the first place. 10 to 15% of the nation's income, by the way. So remember, after the 1930s, when the New Deal happened, we saw government, spending as a proportion of income explode, go beyond 10 to 15% for the first time, to 20 and then up from thereafter. All the way since then, with the exception of only a couple of war years, the 3 legitimate functions of the state have only cost 10 to 15% of GDP. So that if we did nothing different with military spending or judiciary spending or the money spent at the mint, if none of that changed, if we cut no possible bloat or waste out of those 3 areas and just got rid of the rest of it, which doesn't belong there in the first place, you wouldn't have to really change anything in terms of what happens now in those 3 areas. And of course, taxation would be drastically reduced in concert. This would be the best stimulus program, the best way to uplift the poor, the best way to ensure that there's more for everybody in every area: food, clothing, housing, toys, luxuries, jobs. This is the way to do it. And frankly, that's not just a factual matter. Then you have the moral issue. It's not somebody else's place. It's not my place to go sit there and try to use somebody in Washington, D.C. or the state legislature in my state to try to satiate my envy of my neighbors. That's because I hate them because they did more, or if their parents or grandparents passed down money for them. It is true that the person receiving the money didn't really earn it, but all the sacrificing and productivity and all the good things that some people watching this right now are sacrifices so they can make a better life for their kids, give them something better when they graduate high school or it's time for college. Maybe they'll give them money to start a business instead, or their grandkids or whatever. All those things, if you know that money is not going to be able to, you're disqualified from law, from benefiting your own children and grandchildren, because your neighbor is envious and can't see any further than the end of their nose and just looks for a reason to hate the person and steal through the instrument of the state, then you're not going to go through the trouble of working those extra hours or opening that second shop, which provides jobs and goods, by the way, or any of that stuff. So that shrinks and shrinks and shrinks. So that's a long answer to your short question. Why am I doing this? I want people to speak the language of evidence. I want that to trump the language of T-shirt slogans.
I think it's a pretty good way to put it. No, and there's a lot to unpack in there, but I think that you didn't say anything that was out of line. I don't think you said anything that was unacceptable in any sense when you can get somebody to stop and listen to the argument and set aside the politics of it all and get down to maybe educating people on wealth and how wealth is created and how wealth can be transferred from one person to another without there being a gun held to their head, and how that theoretically we can fund what we do as a nation, as states, as a community voluntarily. I love all of these ideas. I'd love to see them sometime come into place, because people like yourself and myself have been talking about these things for a lot longer than you and I have been alive, and we're still having these same arguments. So it's any wonder if we will ever get to a point where people generally accept these ideas, that it's not about that. The thing about pulling yourself up by your bootstraps is not about not caring. It's about caring the most and offering the most opportunity to somebody by not taking opportunities away from them, minimizing who they are, minimizing what they do, reducing what they do to numbers, to a scale on this is what they should be paid. This, it's bad enough that we have to do that already naturally with our skills and things that we have, but to have it forced on us by this sort of third party. The thing you said about knowing three things, if you know three things about a subject, it's, as soon as you said that, it reminded me of this is such a truity in life. You have this sort of Gen Z or whatever, millennials, whoever after Gen X, I guess, that's come along, wearing a Nirvana t-shirt or something. And I'm sure you've heard the thing, well, you see somebody wearing a Nirvana t-shirt, name me 3 Nirvana songs, and they can't. So you see the connection there. As if you know 3 Nirvana songs, you probably know 3 songs more than anybody else, even people who are wearing Nirvana t-shirts. And that strikes me as absolutely true. Is there some kind of number? Is there something that you've seen somewhere that supports that, or is that just your assessment? Because that's my assessment of reality, is that it basically, when I walk into the room, I'm usually the smartest person in the room. And it's not because I want to be, it's not arrogance, it's because I listen to the people talk, and they talk like a bunch of idiots.
Yeah, the number 3 I did sort of, from experience, it is just true. Usually people they sometimes know 1 fact. And if you, by the way, just know 3 facts, it can be very easily to be misled by 3 statistics. Take, for example, the race industry, the victim politics industry, of which there's an offshoot called the race industry. In the United States, here's 3 statistics. In the year 1600, whatever, a boat came over that had black slaves on it, which is a true fact. Up until the 1860s, there was slavery legally allowed in the United States. That is a fact. And in the mid-20th century, there was a small pocket of the United States in which there were like separate water fountains and that kind of a thing going on, and forced segregation. So that a person could speciously assert, well, ever since the 1600s, blacks have been enslaved on this land, and up until the mid-19th century, there were slaves in this country, and then for another 100 years, blacks had to sit at separate counters and use separate water fountains. But when you then use more evidence and say, well, there are already slaves in this country long before any Africans got brought here, who, by the way, were captured and enslaved by Africans, because that's the ordinary way of life throughout all the history of the world, which is part of what I do cover in my second book. I spent a lot of time on that. All throughout world history, slavery and enslavement have been extremely common. I mean, they've been the way things have been. Subjugation of one nation for another. And of course, they've always been the same variety of skin tone in almost every case, because throughout almost all of history, most people couldn't make it more than a few miles from when they were born. If they did, they wouldn't go back. Why? Because you traveled by foot or on horseback. There weren't any roads like we know in America in the second half of the 20th century. There was nothing like that. People talk about roads in 1,000 years ago. they were nothing like the stuff that we have now in terms of its ease to their quality and their upkeep. Even the bad roads are much better than their best roads ever were. So people did, so of course that's always the history of the world. But the three facts thing, I find that people sometimes don't even know one statistic, one fact, and they just sit there and they spout the language of T-shirt slogans. And it really is alarming and disconcerting. But when you talk about being the smartest person in the room when you walk into it, I don't deny that you're an intelligent person. I'm speaking for myself. When I deal with people and they say, "Well, Paul, I'm dumb," or "Paul, I'm not smart," sometimes I'm going to be real specific about the definition of the word smart. Some people say smart or dumb mean they're knowledgeable about a specific topic. I'm going to take it to mean the mind is capable or incapable, right? The person's aptitude is almost in every case not beneath the level necessary. We hold children, single-digit age children, in our much maligned government school system to a standard which is higher than the standard to which these people, that is, if you have the 4 wooden blocks before you when you're in the first grade or whatever, no matter, sometimes they're painted different colors on the sides and they have symbols on different sides. No matter how you fix them and arrange them, 2 plus 2 makes 4 every single time. The first day you might not want to admit it. The next week, because you're 7 years old, it could be a long time. The next week you might not want to admit it. But by the end of the school year, if you don't admit that the 2 plus 2 equals 4, admit it, whether you like it or not, you're not good enough to pass the first grade. And so these people are capable of doing it. When we drive we see traffic, there's a stoplight. They don't want that light to be red. There's 5 cars in front of them. They want to be, if they have to be at a red light, they want to be first in line. So they plow through the 5 cars to try to make it there, or they just keep driving. Some people run red lights, but as a matter of routine, so many people stop at the red light that it shows that they're capable of understanding, of using accepting the evidence, processing information with their mind, even when the answers are things that they don't want to be true. Right? They don't want that light to be red. They don't want to be 10th car in line at that stoplight, just for this example. But they show that probably because of the costs. In other words, the cost brought upon a person who smashes into the car in front of them are obvious and immediate and very difficult to evade. The cost to a person who is spreading known falsehoods that harm the masses is, for example, they advocate monopolies and jobs. We talked about that before, so we'll stick with that. I'm in favor of the worker, so I want government enforced. Again, the great failure of socialism during the New Deal. A beggars union could go to an employer's job site, right? A factory or a workplace that the workers absolutely did not own. They did not even put a down payment on it. They own it. It has nothing to do with them. They just get hired to go there and work in exchange for wages. So that even if the business went under, the worker would lose no money. The worker loses no money. This is a great situation for the employee. All you can do is either gain money or have nothing. You can never lose. And what they made with laws such that if the workers or the unionized people went to the plant and said, "We don't want these terms," they could take over the plant. They could say they could even restrict the business owner from going there. There's strong labor laws. Unemployment during the New Deal period was for 15 to 20%, ranged from 15 to 20% for an entire decade. Bad unemployment is 7 or 8%.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, 15 to 20% for a decade. After 5 years of the New Deal in 1938, unemployment reached 20, not for the whole year, but it did reach 20%. This is the reality situation. Something like this happening, this is disincentivizing hiring people. This is disincentivizing business. It's whatever's supposed to be produced at the factory or the workplace is not being produced, so that's exacerbating shortages. People say that they're benefiting the masses. This does nothing but harm the masses. And so when you talk to people and you start speaking in specifics like this, the tax burden during the New Deal, and the reason I harp on the New Deal so much is because not just because it's politically profitable with this Green New Deal scam that's going on, concocting this industry out of thin air for the benefit of those concocting it out of thin air and their friends, but it's if you watch, okay, I loathe listening to politicians speak, but occasionally I'll watch like a former presidential debate from years ago on like the internet or something and sort of test my knowledge and say, is that true? Is that false? What should they have done? And if I don't know about a matter and I'm interested in it, I'll go look it up and learn more about it. But for years and years during the Kennedy-Nixon debates, each one of them says, I was Kennedy. Well, something will happen, and we're going to do a big program, it'll be bigger than the Tennessee Valley Authority. And I'm thinking, you got them. The TVA was the biggest monopoly going. The Tennessee Valley Authority harmed the Tennessee Valley Authority states more. In other words, the places where the TVA reached their tentacles the furthest were the places most harmed by during a 50-year period. The Tennessee Valley.
Yeah, but there was a great movie came out of it.
Well, that makes it all worthwhile, doesn't it?
Right. No, we got to see Burt Reynolds, and no, it was a fantastic movie. But it was worth it.
But the end of that is, so Kennedy says that, and I'm the guy who yells at you because I hate politicians, especially when they're lying scumbags, which means I hate all politicians more or less. But so he does that, and I'm like, okay, get him, kill him, right? I'm naming things, and Nixon says he just goes right along with it. Why? Because the New Deal is politically profitable. The two most cancerous legacies of the New Deal are, number one, the intentional creation of federally dependent special interest groups. And number two, the conversion of the Treasury into a perpetual campaign fund with which to purchase their votes. And that is really the worst legacy. And that's one of the biggest problems with, the expansion of the state, the expansion of government, federal government, is that ever-present capacity to outgrow, not service the people, and instead service the individual people who are serving in those seats. And so I talk about in my second book, Socialism, the Gift That Keeps on Taking, the gift that keeps on taking. We talk about shackling the beast and unshackling the citizenry. So imagine that the government, the state, which in my judgment is a necessary evil, and if you want to talk about a way that we might be able to get by without one, I'd be very interested.
I'm not convinced. I don't believe that people are ready for it. I don't believe that the average person is wise enough. It's the difference when you're talking about the smartest person in the room. That difference that you were talking about is the difference between knowledge and wisdom. Having knowledge is one thing. Having the ability to have knowledge is completely different. And I think that there's a whole bunch of people out there that, because they've been taught that knowledge is the key, that what they know is what's most important, they skip over the things that they don't understand. They don't have the wisdom to accept those things immediately. And and you're absolutely right, barring mental or physical incapacity, we're all relatively equally capable of doing all of these things and sussing these things out, figuring these things out for ourselves. And given the opportunity, that's why we have to turn back the government. That's why we have to turn back the education system. That's why we have to do these things to give the people more power, to empower them to find their way again, because they're completely mired within the system. There's no way to get out of the system because it's so pervasive. And the only way to do that is to get rid of the system that's in place. And I don't think that means you throw the baby out with the bathwater. I think that means that you trim it back as far as you can reasonably trim it back to communities, to smaller sources of government. And then if you look at this whole federal system, it has its three duties, and it should be real simple, and it shouldn't be big, and it should be doing what it should be doing to help America is what it says in those documents: promote the general welfare, not buy every public utility, not manage everything. Promote the good ideas that it sees and let people make choices and have the choices for themselves, and protect the people in making those choices. People don't understand why we even have the political and judicial system that we have, and the reason that it's been set up, and we pay lip service to the idea of checks and balances. Well, if we had actually maintained those values and maintained those ideas, we'd have some sort of smaller version of of the government that we have now. Would have much more independent states, and I think much more powerful, much stronger society than what we have now. I see us sliding, and not really any other way to get back out of it, because every new generation is that much further down the line and incapable of being able to drag themselves out of it, because they can't even see that there's something to drag themselves out of. What they see, the system that they see, while they see that there's a battle between the left and right, what they don't see is that though that left and right battle, it doesn't matter who wins it, it still supports the system. And so that's all they ever see.
That's true. I do have some concrete suggestions for concrete solutions, which I'd be happy to run by you.
Absolutely, yeah.
I would like to, before I do that, though, I just want to use this analogy of the beast, and keeping it chained or unchained, because this is a big part of what you said, the slide that's going on here. So imagine the government, the state, it's this necessary thing. We have to, let's just presume for the moment, there are some people watching your show who will quarrel with this, which is
absolutely.
Okay. My ears are wide open to any kind of solution that makes sense. Like yourself and most people.
Voluntary cooperation. I don't care what you do beyond that. If you voluntarily set up a system, it's theoretically possible to govern voluntarily. Absolutely. I totally believe that.
Okay. Well, you have to have, somebody's got to be, in other words, I might voluntarily decide to kill my neighbor because I don't like the way they play their music.
Right, but you don't need the law to tell you that that's wrong or to punish you for that.
Well, I don't. But there's
right, nobody does. They just have, people have to be empowered to accept that if you are going to try to take the life of somebody, that they could take your life. If you're going to mess with their property, they can take your life. People need to understand that those are natural consequences of the reality of messing with other people and their property. Those are you either accept it or you don't. We don't need a system that says it's illegal to do that.
Well, what I'm pointing out is there has to be somebody who decides, there has to be some way of deciding, because in other words, let's say there was a disagreement. Let's say there were 100 people in a room, right? We're in a town hall meeting, right? And almost everybody is in agreement that, listen, if somebody assaults you, you start setting parameters. Somebody assaults you or tries to rob your home, it's okay to kill them then. But if they're wearing a T-shirt you don't like, that's not acceptable. Or maybe 97 people say that it is acceptable, and 3 people say that it's not. Right,
right, but that's voting. That's nothing to do with people violating other people and having consequences. That's pretending that you can control people and stop them from violating other people by setting an arbitrary system of consequences for it. The consequences are, if you mess with other people and their stuff, they might kill you. And it's perfectly okay that they do so for this reason and this reason only. Because you broke the barrier to their whatever. There's no special power. There's no special ability whatsoever that exists within the system or within an individual other than to make the choice not to mess with other people and their stuff that ultimately protects you. You can set up all the laws and punishments you want and tell people that they will be punished, and they will be punished under this law by these people over here in their high castle all you want. It's not actually going to stop anybody from doing the crime, and it's not actually going to bring justice to the people, because the state wasn't violated. Those people over there in their little castle weren't the ones who were violated. It was this person over here. And so you can say that. You can go ahead and you can say that we need to have that, but we don't. What we need to have is people who are empowered to understand that we all have the ability and the right to defend ourselves at any time for any reason that we see fit. And the consequences of it doesn't matter, because if you violate my property and I kill you, it doesn't matter if the state violates me, locks me in a cage, takes away everything I own, gives it to your mother, you're dead. We need to go back to that point of where did we lose that point? This is where I would have to question that there's some serious disconnect between who we are. You kind of mentioned this actually earlier in sort of young children versus adults. We're told as children all the time to keep your hands off of people and keep your hands off of their stuff. You just don't do with it. But then all of a sudden around the age of 18, you get the power to vote, and all of a sudden it's okay to touch other people and their stuff as long as those guys over there set up a system for you to be protected when you touch their stuff. So that's all I had to say about that.
No, you're right. So this misuse of the state is right on. I just have... What you said is interesting for me. So if you have a system, for me, I like some kind of punishment system for that. So let's stick with this murdering your neighbor business, because they tried to, enter your house or something. Suppose their friends, somebody they know comes after you for revenge now. Mm-hmm. And then your friends start going after them. Mm-hmm. And it's just never ending.
It's mutual combatants, and it's about a morality, and it's about a sense, because that's not going to stop. You see it still today. You see gang members do it all day long, every single day, and that's what you're talking about when you're talking about the lowest. The lowest common denominator of all these divided up peoples. And so if you're talking about the lowest common denominator of people, well, the people you're trying to protect are those people that are killing each other on the streets, and those laws and those systems in place don't do that, period. You need to have a fundamental shift in morality and understanding, and you need to empower other people so that they understand that if you defend your property, you defend your home, that it's not a crime to do so. If we were in that space, this idea that we have to have laws and punishments, the punishment is that you have to pay back the person you damaged their property. That's it, period. The basis for any case, for any crime, is a victim with demonstrable damages that can be priced in the marketplace. And lives, things like that can't be priced, but they can be, absolutely. And there can be a
life insurance companies. Yeah, life insurance companies price lives all the time. Right? Exactly.
Yeah. So that's it. And so I absolutely agree with you in the theory that there has to be some sort of system. I don't even know what else to call it. Just something that you would follow, and a set of orders or something. Except that we already know that that's not true. That for 3,000 years, Hammurabi tried to do it. They've been trying to do this for thousands of years. Set up some sort of moral code enforced through a system, and it doesn't work. And so the answer to that is empowering individuals to understand that they are the first person to protect themselves and to protect their property from others.
Yeah, it's very interesting what you're saying. So for me, in my judgment, I'll call it judgment, but it seems plain to me that yes, when you abrogate, when government or people through the instrument of government abrogate or take away from the individual citizen their own responsibility, obligation. You can say right, but really it's an obligation, a responsibility to protect themselves, to take care of themselves. Let's remember Milton Friedman, the great American economist Milton Friedman, who a lot of people don't know, which is interesting. So I encourage any of you to check him out after the show. But check out
one thing at a time.
The four types of exchanges, from the most efficient to the least efficient. The most efficient exchange is when I spend my own money in an attempt to benefit me. Why? Because the signals are all clearest. They're all, in other words, your use of money, your judgment of use for your money might be different from my judgment of use for my money, whether I'm getting my value or whatever. So this is a great way we can vote. We vote with our wallet, right? We vote with our pocketbook. If you don't like a store or company's policies, just don't shop there. You know what I mean? Or if you don't like a certain kind of shirt, just buy the other kind of shirt or something else. So, but this is the most efficient. If I feel like I'm being hoodwinked, or I'm not getting my money's worth, or it's being wasted, or if let's say it was a gift for somebody, the person's not appreciative. My neighbor comes to me and says, I'm out of work, I'm having some trouble. Can I, have some food or borrow some money or whatever? Maybe I say, hey, listen, hard times. I've been on hard times. I give them some money, and then I see them the next day getting drunk, never looking for work all week. And then I can immediately see these signals, and I decide, okay, well, that private charity, I'm happy to be charitable, but this person is taking advantage of me, and I'm really just paying them to fail. And that's what I do call the second wave of the welfare state. It's paid to fail socialism.
Sure. Yeah.
You're only paid so far as you fail to earn a certain amount of money, as long as you fail to know who the father of your children are, so long as you fail to be a productive member of society. They are paid. So that as long as you start to earn money and become productive, it's revoked from you. And I think we've all seen people with our own two eyes. I've many times in my life seen a person come into a job. They say, oh, I want more, they're paid hourly. They want more hours. I want to work an extra day. I want to do this. I want to do that. They walk in the door talking to the manager with that. The next day or shortly thereafter, they talk to their caseworker and say, no, they'll take my food stamps. They'll take my food stamps. They'll do that. So they view the government as their real employer, their true income source, their career. Such a person is confessing. They view that that's their career, so they're paid to fail, and they're caught in this welfare trap. We talked about this trap, this slide. I call it the welfare trap. They've got you, and you got to vote for them, which is bad. And but they're not being as productive as they could be. Instead of doing something productive and useful, working for a job, employing people, they're instead sitting at home and figuring out new ways to, get paid not to do anything. So that's a net negative. It's a detriment to the nation as a whole. It's a detriment to that individual. It's a detriment to their children, who are not going to be provided for as well on the long term. This week, this month, it might be a little less money. But over the course, 20 years, what do they do? They're 40, they're 35, 45 years old now, and they've done nothing professionally. They have no skills. They have no networking. Their only networking is in the welfare system. The only networking is with the people who are not going to help you move up in the world at all. So anyway, the most efficient exchange is me spending my own money in an attempt to benefit myself. Next, I could spend my money in an attempt to benefit you, right? I go out. Remember when you're 8 years old and you buy your mother a gift and it's, Power G.I. Joe or Batman or something, right? So that should be obvious why that's less efficient. Your mother would know that, but you don't know any better when you're 8 years old. So I spend my money in an attempt to supposedly benefit you. Next down the list, I spend your money in an attempt to supposedly benefit me. I might decide that $20,000 is a good price for me to pay for this loaf of bread for me to have, but you wouldn't feel that way. So that there's a disruption, right? The decision to between the person whose money it is and the person who's spending the money is that big interruption that's less efficient. And by far, finally, the worst by a landslide is I spend your money in an attempt to benefit some unnamed third party that neither one of us knows, neither one of us has ever met, never will meet in our entire lives. And that is the case with supposedly egalitarian redistributive government. Yeah. So that's the lowest. And that is what people are advocating and clinging to when they react negatively to the idea that you take away this whole apparatus outside of the three legitimate functions.
Sure.
And so that is again alarming. And so by speaking the language of evidence with people and even having that conversation with them, it's very obvious what is better and what is worse. And I just try to do my best to have a positive impact on people, because frankly, it is kind of selfish, right? It's self-serving for me because I want a better world in which to live. I want a better country in which to live. I want to have, I want my tax rates to be less, not just because I want to have less of my money wasted, but because there'll just be more for everybody. More. There are unemployed. When you talk about, back to this business of minimum wage, because it's something that's so popularly invoked by politicians, depending on where, again, I live in West Virginia now, but I grew up in New York State, Soviet New York, I call it. That place, if you have enough money to get out of bed and try to go to work in the morning, you must have too much and you're oppressing somebody.
Yeah, right.
It's real bad news. And so what happens there is every few years, every 3 to 6 years, there's like a chain letter with like fill in the blank. And the only thing they change is the dollar amount. Right. So the minimum wage is currently, $7, and that's barbaric. It's inhumane. People shouldn't be forced to work for that kind of money. It's just terrible. So what we need to do to help them, we will uplift them by making it $9 instead of $7. You got to vote for me, and I will help you. And then what happens is the people. So in reality, there's a study which I do cite in my second book, which shows that when minimum wage goes up, I think it's 10% or something like that, there is an immediately 0.25% reduction in those types of jobs. So that is the immediate bad consequence is hardly noticeable. It's like alcohol. It's like alcoholism. At first, your liver takes a little bit. Then in 5 years, those jobs are reduced by 3% from that minimum wage increase, so that the politician gets the political profit from it. Because in 5 years, they already won the election, right? The election's gone by. Several news cycles have gone by. And now there are even more unemployed people because of that minimum wage law before than there would be otherwise. But that's not obvious. It's more subtle and less obvious, right? Everybody understands a welfare check in the mail today. It's much more difficult to see that the reason that you're dependent on that welfare check today is because of a benefit of a law that was supposed to benefit you 5 years ago. So anyway, they sent it now $9 is barbaric after a couple of years. So it doesn't solve anything. And so now it's going to be 12. Now it's going to be 50. And so that's what they do. They just go around and they do that. It's politically profitable. The only class who benefits from this. Yeah. I'm going to throw a couple of concrete solutions at you with this.
Yes, please.
The only class who benefits with this are career politicians, our ruling class. And so it seems obvious to me to leave. I mean, if we're going to have this, we have to have some system in place for the three legitimate functions. We have to chain the beast. Remember that King Kong's the beast. We got to have him. All four of his limbs, the giant gorilla, are, say, shackled to a wall, right? Then you undo one of its limbs. This is a wartime analogy. You undo one of its arms one day. The other three are all fastened well to the walls. And he turns one of those cranks that generates electricity, that puts electricity into an electric bank. There's one of those in Niagara Falls. They probably have them in other places. And with his one arm, the beast can do in an hour what would be 18 million man-hours worth. It's incredible. Whoa, isn't this incredible in this short burst? And then people say, well, wait a second. What if we let another one of them just halfway loose? And then 10 years later, well, what if we let that all the way loose? And then another 20 years, well, let the other. And then before you know it, there's only one thing. She rips the shackle off the wall. The beast is unchained, and the role of master and servant are inverted. Right? The beast no longer serves the people. The people run in fear of the beast. So this is my analogy with this beast unchained. So we have to, for me, the goal is to shackle the beast in such a way that is sufficiently restrained but can still perform its three basic functions. And so this business of the only class who benefits our ruling class, to me, we're going to talk about a couple of concrete term limits, which, again, I do discuss in my second book. What if in the Republic of Texas, prior to its becoming a state in the Union, the Republic of Texas, they had a law that the president could not serve consecutive terms in office. And I would propose that for every office. Imagine if every person in every office, in the first place, so let's presume for the moment we successfully get rid of everything they can't pay for with the 10 to 15% of GDP, which means they can only have the military, the judicial system, and the Mint, the Treasury. Okay, everything else is gone. So, of those people that would be elected to office, you still have the Congress, the Senate, you still have your state legislature, you still have a lot of stuff, governors and all of that. They could never run for re-election. They could never serve consecutive terms. Now, I want to be real clear about this. Not just in one office, but in any office. You have to sit out for as long as you just sat in. So, if you were just a federal senator for 6 years, okay, once your term is up, you have to sit out. You have to get a real job for 6 years. There's real job meaning one that is motivated by profit and loss, right? For a minimum period of 6 years. You can't campaign. You can't do anything. So that we make serving in government just a service. It's something that is a transient experience for the citizens. Because what happens is you have citizens who are in government as their permanent home base and only pass through the real world, pass through the private sector transiently, if at all. What we want, what seems to me, the solution to this ruling class business, so that we get the people in there much more likely to serve the long term, to serve the general interest instead of the special interest. They won't be fetching for campaign money all the time. They won't be. That won't be the case. You have to sit out for as long as you just sat in. Number two, you can never hold the same office twice, no matter what office it is. And number three, there's a total time served limit of 10 years or 3 terms. Whichever. So in other words, if you have 8 years in and you get elected to a third term, you can finish your term, even though it'll put you over 10 years. But a lifetime service cap. So the 3 important things are: 1, you can never hold the same office twice. Number 2, and that means like in the Senate, as we just said, the U.S. Senate, you can't be a senator in Arizona and then turn around
and be a carpetbagger and go be a senator somewhere else.
Right. After you sit out for 6 years, you cannot serve in the same body twice. You can't. Your state legislature, the whole business. You're in the state legislature once, fine. Then you sit out. You can be the governor once, or your town's mayor, or whatever. You can go be a house member, whatever it is. But you have to. So never the same office twice. You must sit out for as long as you just served in. You must leave. So you just served 2 years in. You got to leave for at least 2 years. And number 3, a total cap on service, 10 years or 3 terms. What are your thoughts on this?
I like the idea. I like the idea of limiting the system to anything. It would just be nice to see some limits. It doesn't seem to have any sort of limitations at all. And again, I believe that it's theoretically possible to do a voluntary system of government. I think that people, I think it's provable out here on the street every single day. We get along, generally speaking, most of us, every single day, all day, without the need or consideration of any authority or their position on anything. With no use for them whatsoever. What's that?
Can you be more specific about that? I'm very interested. So this voluntary system, like what would that?
Literally everything we do every day. Literally going to the store, interacting with people in the store, those people that set up their businesses, when they're not being forced, every 3 months or whatever it is, or every month, depending on, every year, depending on what your schedule is with the IRS, concerned about paying the government money and meeting some government standard. What we're concerned about here is making ourselves happy and doing good business with other people. And I see that across the board in society. It's the manipulation at the next level, the political level, on top of it all, that really messes things up. We generally out here get along pretty great. Even those people that don't have the same color skin and things like that. That's what I mean by that, is that day to day, everything that we have in society, everything that has been built here, I absolutely believe has been built in spite of government's manipulations and controls and the things that it is. We've managed as people, as industrious people, business people, to find ways to work around and through government manipulations and controls, while you have this third party of people sitting here collecting wealth and stealing our wealth, collecting money and living off of the rest of us. And what the rest of us are doing constantly is trying to find new ways, every avenue that we can, to avoid trying to feed into that system or be robbed by that system. At least people that are awake and aware of what is going on. I think most people, generally speaking, have no concept of how government works and what is going on with the economy and money, and they don't care. They just don't care. All they really want is to get their check, and they don't care if it comes from the government. They don't care if it comes from, they just want their check for whatever amount of work they feel like putting in. I've just heard it so often, and you hear it. Well, it's part of the reason that I do this, because I don't want to become an old, bitter old man who worked his whole life and now doesn't have anything. I'd rather just be an angry young man all my life who never gets anything and realizes that's why he doesn't have anything at the end of his life. No, I try to avoid the anger part of it at all. And I look around and I see these people who've lived their entire lives. Oh, they bought their house and they paid for their education and they worked at the same job for 30 years, 40 years, whatever it was, and now they have nothing. They still have to come up with a couple $1,000s every year to pay the taxes on a house that they paid off years ago, that they don't even own anymore. They should be retired and enjoying their lives and enjoying the things that they work for, and instead they're still out here playing this game, and so you get the old guy sitting in his chair. I don't care. Just send me my check at the end of the month and leave me alone. And there's so much of that. We got like 5 minutes left.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, I guess we don't even have that long. God, it's only about 2 minutes, actually, because I get 57 and 30. You got to do my math for the commercials.
Well, that's too bad. I'm enjoying our talk.
Yeah, we'll have to do it again. We'll schedule another one. Happy to have you back anytime. I'm really enjoying the conversation, and I like the fact that you have some solutions. I am of a mind that solutions are a great thing, and that we need to be working toward them. And that's the whole idea, toward anarchy. We're working toward it. We're trying to make the effort. I get that this is not happening in a vacuum, that we're not just going to wake up tomorrow and everything's going to be great. There has to be some effort put into it. Some of us are going to do this effort, and some of us will do the hammering and the banging and things. So.
Yeah, a lot of people will. I mean, I'm a kind of person, I'm not looking for a fight, but if it becomes necessary, I tell you what, during 2020, when the Burn Loot Murder Club was out and active, I mean, they were out in Buffalo, and there was talk of a demonstration. I mean, I had my shotgun ready. I didn't go out looking for anybody.
Yeah, right. But
I wasn't cowering inside either. I opened my front door, and once in a while, I looked around and made sure everything, as long as everything was okay, that was fine. Wasn't looking for trouble, but I was ready. If trouble comes to me, I'll do it. Another time, maybe I'll come in. We'll talk about badmouth government. Some will talk about Supreme Court decisions, traitors that were let off from the noose in this country. We'll talk about France in 1789, which some people mistakenly call a victory of anarchy, a victory for the poor.
Oh, yes.
It is one of the most tightly controlled government situations ever to exist. The concentration of power to the hands of the few by decree, which most people call, which is socialism or communism, whatever you want to call it in practice, was to such an extreme degree. You had like 10 to 20 people really calling all the shots. But the names were changing then. So I mean, maybe another time we'll talk.
No, I love that connection, and a lot of people don't know that how much of a connection there is between the revolution in France and the revolution here in America, and the people that were behind it. They don't have. I'd love to have that conversation with you sometime. Absolutely. Yeah, unfortunately, we are out of time. God, man, after all that we went through, that is so cool. The books, everything you need to know about Paul Dayton, pauldayton.us, and then, of course, the links there for the Amazon to purchase the books are at towardanarchy.com. It's episode 2519. Paul Dayton, thank you so much. I appreciate you, my friend.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
You too.
You're listening to Toward Anarchy.